Was there a shooting schedule, or did you, every day you weren't sure what you were doing?
No, yeah, every day was just, he would call us ahead of time and say, okay, tomorrow we're going to meet at this location, and we really didn't know what would be going on there. Here's where we're going to be, and then just know your lines. One take.
Well, it seems there's this restaurant.
There was not multiple takes of anything?
No, never. That's why it's all shit.
Even
Sometime in the early 2000s, somewhere in Los Angeles, someone found something. Something that would change the lives of those who created it forever. When an original 35mm print of Samurai Cop was rediscovered in an old film storage vault, it of course immediately found its way online, leading to its first official US release in a 2004 DVD from Guilty Pleasures, nearly 15 years after its completion. The film is not just bad, but bafflingly incompetent and totally oblivious to the point of unintentional comedy. Naturally, the long-lost relic of knockoff 80s action movies quickly skyrocketed into so bad it's good legendary status. You know, movies like Troll 2, The Room, Birdemic, and of course the films of Neil Breen.
I can't believe you committed suicide. I cannot believe you committed suicide. How could you have done this? How could you have committed suicide?
Not Sharknado, though. They do that shit on purpose. But that's just the last 10 years or so, and for most of its shelf life or drawer life, Samurai Cop sat rotting in obscurity, and the cast and crew, which worked tirelessly and suffered greatly to produce it, went about their lives totally unaware that a time bomb was just waiting to go off. Samurai Cop was not only director Amir Shervan's final American action film, but also the final film of his cinematic career, which had begun with great notoriety in his home nation. The film is also paradoxically his most popular and beloved production, and Shervan lived his entire life believing this film, the one that forced him into retirement, was a complete failure. And it was an hilarious failure. But how did this happen? How did something like Samurai Cop come to fruition? How can a group of adults produce such a shining example of poor judgment and creative incompetence? How, I say? Well, as you've probably deduced, I'm about to tell you, so sit tight. That's something people still say. So let's just get this out of the way. No one really knows why or what motivated Amir Shervan to make Samurai Cop, or how he and producing partner Orlando Carati funded the production. Shervan clearly had a love for American action filmmaking of the 1980s, or at least thought they could be profitable, because he made 5 of them in 4 years. Ultimately, Samurai Cop is obviously some kind of Lethal Weapon ripoff, and he was probably just hoping to cash in on the popularity of its success. But that's not where the story is. Producer, writer, and director Amir Shervan was born in Tehran, Iran in 1929, traveling to the United States as a young man in the late 1940s to study theater in Pasadena, California. Shervan returned to his home country, where he went on to become a well-respected screenwriter, actor, and director, producing over 25 films between 1967 and 1980. However, due to certain cultural differences, Shervan's filmmaking approach wouldn't translate well to Western audiences, as Iranian audiences had a very different standard at the time when it came to motion pictures. At the height of the 1979 Iranian Revolution, Shervan was forced to once again relocate to the United States, as the anti-Western sentiment in Iran, including Western-style filmmaking, had grown much more powerful. After receiving his citizenship, Shervan eventually settled in Los Angeles, where he founded Hollywood Royal Pictures. It was under this moniker that from 1987 to 1992, Shervan would produce some of the most wonderfully awful and baffling action movies of either decade, forever immortalizing himself as a B-movie icon. With a budget of about $50,000, Samurai Cop began filming in June of 1990 in the San Fernando Valley, California. Shervan didn't have the lighting necessary to shoot at night, so the entire film would have to be set during the day. Other cost-saving measures included actors having to costume themselves and pretty much just not paying most of the actors, reusing props, and also using the personal vehicles of his cast and crew. Shervan also lacked adequate sound equipment, and while the production began with the actors being individually mic'd in addition to a boom mic, most of the film was shot entirely without sound, leading to some unfortunate ADR.
In no way we go under Fujiyama's flag.
Many of the film's sequences would be shot in and around Hollywood Royal Pictures Studios in Silver Lake, Los Angeles, as well as several pickup shots in director Amir Shervan's private home in Westlake. The film used several other locations as well, most of which being homes or properties belonging to Shervan's personal friends, each being reused for multiple scenes. Thank God he had a crackerjack editor himself. And Ruben Zadurian, who's mainly known for Young Rebels, Shervan also basically bullshitted his way into places, including a dental office inside an urgent care clinic and a popular Hollywood restaurant and nightclub. While Shervan had initially planned to shoot the film within 3 weeks in June 1990, the production actually ran through August, mainly due to Shervan having to halt production frequently to develop footage. He also stopped production whenever he ran out of money, which was also fairly regularly. The production started with sufficient on-location craft services and the typical perks one would expect on a feature film shoot. But as Shervan's funds dwindled, so did the luxuries, and catering quickly became delivery, and then that became fast food until eventually there was no food service whatsoever. Shervan was reported to be very moody on set as well, at times excited and passionate about what they were creating that day, and at other times appearing unshakably anxious and despondent. Shervan's obsessiveness and unwillingness to deviate from his vision earned him the reputation of a lovable tyrant, feverishly driven to complete his project at all costs, and going on to push low-budget filmmaking to its breaking point. The film opens with a meeting between rival Japanese gang members and some white people who are competing for dominance over the Los Angeles cocaine market. It's here we first meet the diabolical katana gang leader Fujiyama. You heard that right. However, things quickly turn sour.
Come on, let's get going.
So in this first scene, if you look closely at the tennis court in the background, that's actually Matt Hannon and another actor practicing for a later scene at the same location. You can also catch him in the background here, too. We meet undercover detectives Frank Washington and Joe Marshall, Marshall having just transferred from the San Diego PD to take on the LA drug trade, having been trained by Japanese martial arts masters, also mastering both their language and culture. But he also does stuff like this.
So anyway, you get on the phone and you tell me that these, what's his name, Omaha, Yamaha, whatever his name is, right, is after me.
After a bit of just driving around, the partners find themselves in a heated car chase following a botched drug bust. And it's just thrilling.
Shoot! Shoot him! Hold on! You got him!
The van crashes and, yep, explodes, and their only surviving suspect is horribly burned. At least, that's what they were going for. Shervan's guerrilla filmmaking style became so extreme that during this scene, star Matt Hannon and actor Mark Frazer were tasked with extinguishing the flames, despite neither actor having any stunt experience or training whatsoever. And of course, Shervan also gave the actors no notice that they'd be expected to do this. So Joe has sex with fellow LAPD officer Peggy. This is literally the next scene with no lead-in whatsoever for 2.5 minutes of screen time. Anyway, Fujiyama orders his henchmen, led by the formidable Yamashita, who I'm assuming is adopted, to silence the hospitalized burn victim before he recovers. Frank and Joe guard the hospital, where Joe egregiously flirts with the nurses while Frank awkwardly watches.
Would you like to go out with me?
Yes, I would.
Would you like to fuck me?
Bingo.
So, Shervan had a habit of asking his actors to mug or laugh for the camera without providing any real context or motivation, so what you are left with are moments like this. Because film was and is such an expensive medium, Shervan also typically limited his shots to only one take, which, if your name isn't Clint Eastwood, is not advised. Also, look at the way this hospital dresses its staff. Yamashita and the female henchwoman sneak into the hospital dressed as doctors, but for some reason Yamashita still decides to hide inside a linen cart, which she's using for trash? The fiendish Yamashita beheads the witness with a deadly swipe of his katana.
What does katana mean?
It means Japanese sword.
And his cohort smuggles him out of the hospital like a parent humoring their toddler playing make-believe. The detectives are scalded by Salty Precinct Captain Romer for causing more bloodshed, with Romer feeling like someone has stuck a big club up his ass and he has to figure out a way to get it out of there. And it's literally like at times Shervan forgot to direct. Frank and Joe pay a visit to the Blue Lagoon restaurant where they confront Fujiyama. And you can cut the tension with a knife.
Hey, counselor. You still have 3 or 4 hours before the courthouse closes.
Now I'm telling these son of a bitches that we respect the Japanese of this country who are honest businessmen. And yeah, this is the land of opportunity for legitimate business, not for death merchants who distribute drugs to our children through schools and on the streets. Now I'm telling these motherfuckers that if they continue killing our children to make their precious millions that they deposit in their secret Swiss bank accounts. Counselor, before your lawsuit even gets off the court clerk's desk, I'll have their stinking bodies in garbage bags and ship them back to Japan for fertilizer. Got it?
And there's also this guy.
Her mother owns the place.
Where's her father?
Bang!
Killed? Who shot him?
He.
Who?
Him.
Who's him?
Himself.
Oh, he committed suicide.
Yes.
Who is also a Shervan regular, by the way, which is a thing that exists. The partners are sloppily attacked by a mob of samurai henchmen, one at a time of course, and it's here that we get this wonderful moment.
Freeze you motherfuckers. Leave him alone. Uncuff him. I mean it, uncuff him.
Damn.
By the way, the special effects in this scene were a combination of paintball pellets and Roman candles. However, later in this scene, they were just throwing shit. Joe visits one of Fujiyama's business partners, Jennifer, and like any good law enforcement officer, tries to pressure her into a date.
Hi.
So the reason this hideous mop line is featured so prominently in this scene is because Shervan thought it was interesting and decided his actors should have to share screen time with it. Joe beats up some henchmen, leading him and Frank to the other ruthless samurai henchman leader, Okamura. Legendary American martial artist Gerald Okamura was brought on board to choreograph the film's hand-to-hand combat fight sequences and also agreed to play the role of Okamura. When Okamura wasn't present, however, the actors were forced to pretty much improvise their fight scenes on the spot, often only allowed less than 20 minutes to prepare in between shots. But you totally can't tell. They catch Okamura in bed, of course, adding to the men wearing black Speedos motif the film so elegantly weaves. However, Okamura attempts an escape, and a stilted hand-to-hand combat sequence ensues, magically in a completely different location. However, Okamura is shot dead by Joe after pulling Frank's gun from his holster, proving once again that they're the world's worst detectives.
Not captured alive.
Pickup shots were filmed in November 1990 along with additional looping for the actors. In fact, Shervan and other main cast members ended up having to provide their own voices for many of the film's background characters, with Shervan doing most of the heavy lifting himself. And it's totally seamless.
Hey, hold on. Burn it!
Who could shoot this in a mafia boss's house?
Well, just a little business with him.
Are you expecting anybody?
No.
That's a warning bell.
Go behind him, get back.
What is he doing?
No. Leave him alone. He's a samurai. He wants to die with honor.
Principal photography finally wrapped after a long, challenging, and frustrating summer shoot. Shervan dismissed his cast and crew, planning to release the film in the coming year.
Don't know where.
But filming recommenced in January of 1991 because Shervan realized that the initial cut of the film lacked close-ups, adequate coverage, and generally the language of cinema, and he still had about 50% of the movie left to shoot. However, pressuring the cast and crew to return, Shervan assured them that he had only a few shots left to capture. Infamously, star Matt Hannon, who rightfully assumed he was finished with production, cut his hair extremely short at the advice of his agent, only to be told months later that Shervan wasn't finished with the film. No worries though, nothing a discount women's mannequin wig can't solve. While Shervan promised Hannon that he would only be seen in the wig in long shots and at flattering angles, this obviously didn't happen, and Hannon was forced to suffer through the remainder of production looking completely ridiculous. Star Matt Hannon, who legally changed his name to Matt Caritas in the mid-90s, but I'm just going to ignore that, grew up in Portland, Oregon, and came to Hollywood hoping to become a John Candy-style comedic actor, as he was a little under 300 pounds at the time. And while he managed to find some work in brief minor roles, he found more stable income as a bodyguard, where he gained his muscular physique at the direction of his employer, Sylvester Stallone. In 1989, Hannon found himself featured in the shoestring budget action movie American Revenge from director David Schwartz, which obviously did nothing to elevate his career.
What about my cut?
Desperate for exposure, Hannon was recommended to Shervan by a mutual friend and was handed the role of Joe Marshall, Samurai Cop, the moment Shervan laid eyes on him, exclaiming that he was perfect for the role. Hannon thought his big break had finally come, and it had. He just wouldn't know it for another 20 years. Like most of the other actors, Hannon was paid a small fee, while Shervan promised that the footage he would provide them was the true payoff. Although Hannon thought the script was poorly written, likely due to English being a second language for Shervan, the director promised that Hannon would be able to improvise his dialogue in order to achieve a more natural voice for his performance. This, of course, didn't happen. Shervan would also often direct Hannon to speak and act more like Sylvester Stallone as well, who Hannon slightly resembles. Hannon understandably grew more and more frustrated with the production and Shervan's uncouth direction, and eventually just gave up on the oblivious director and began purposely sabotaging his own performance, assuming the film would never see the light of day, and in hopes that Shervan would cut him from the film as much as possible. Shervan used all of it. So Fujiyama orders an attack on Joe following the death of Okamura, and Joe effortlessly guns them down. One random sex scene later, Joe tracks down Jennifer again, except this time instead of pressuring her into a date, he tricks her into having sex with him. You know, because it's her birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Meanwhile, Yamashita and his gang brutally torture Joe's friends and associates, hoping to find the whereabouts of the Samurai Cop. So, just to break this down, at this point in the film, our hero is escaping for a sexy weekend at the beach while his friends and co-workers are mercilessly interrogated concerning his location. Alright. Yamashita catches up with Joe and Jennifer, who make a narrow escape. A bloodthirsty Captain Romer orders Frank and Joe to attack the Katana gang in retaliation, taking no prisoners. The partners close in on the Katana compound and go in guns blazing, and Fujiyama orders his men to take them down once and for all. Of course, Frank and Joe mow through Fujiyama's henchmen like a lawnmower. And Jennifer, who I guess is also there, is taken hostage by Fujiyama, who forces the pair to drop their weapons and then proceeds to shoot Frank in the gut. However, to Fujiyama's surprise, Frank survives the gunshot and shoots Fujiyama dead.
He was smart in every way, except one thing.
What's that?
With all his money and success, he's not as smart as I am.
To do what?
Put on a bulletproof vest, man.
Joe now sets his sights on Yamashita, and the mortal foes quickly find themselves in a katana-on-katana showdown, again teleporting to a totally different location. Gerald Okamura was a trained Aikido master, he unfortunately was not given much say when it came to staging the film's climactic battle, the direction for these shots coming mostly from Shervan himself, who was not an Aikido master. Joe defeats Yamashita but decides to spare his life. Dishonored, Yamashita performs ritual suicide, and Joe and Jennifer return to finish what they started. Following the completion of Samurai Cop, Hannon salvaged what footage he could for his acting reel and continued to audition, even landing a brief role on the pilot for the popular TV show Jag. But success continued to elude Hannon, and he eventually traded in his acting ambitions for a family, and to pursue a career in stand-up comedy. Today, Hannon resides in Southern California and helps manage major trade shows, including the annual San Diego Comic-Con. Hannon famously resurfaced in a 2014 YouTube video at his daughter's request, where he announced to the world that Samurai Cop was still alive, as rumors had begun to circulate that the former actor had died. Actor Mark Frazer, who plays Frank Washington, has a master's degree from Columbia University and had found lucrative success in working behind the scenes at CBS television, but soon began to search for a better creative outlet. Frazer, a native New Yorker, became a theatrically trained actor and found some success in small parts on television before moving to LA and auditioning for the role of Frank Washington at Shervan's home in early 1990, after Shervan reached out to Frazer directly. Frazer was also cast on the spot without having seen the script or even told which part he was playing. After Samurai Cop, Frazer went back to the theater, but ultimately found the job market in Hollywood to be a little too crowded, and he eventually returned to New York. Robert Z'Dar as Yamashita was arguably the most well-known actor to be featured in the production, having starred in a slew of 80s and 90s action cinema, and notable for his imposing stature and powerful jawline. The actor is perhaps best known by fans as the undead killer cop Matt Cordell in the Maniac Cop trilogy. Z'Dar had actually worked with Shervan prior to Samurai Cop in Killing American Style and Young Rebels. However, Z'Dar found the shoot for Samurai Cop to be especially arduous. According to Matt Hannon, Z'Dar was visibly frustrated with Shervan's careless methods and lack of professionalism, despite the two being friends, and Z'Dar also failed to acclimate to the lack of on-set luxuries he was accustomed to on larger studio shoots. Z'Dar sadly passed away in 2015. For the role of the villainous Fujiyama, Shervan reportedly found Cranston Komuro in LA's Little Tokyo while he was strolling down the street one day and handed Komuro his business card. Komuro, who was the lead investigator for LA's rent stabilization unit, initially declined the offer, but Shervan was so persistent that Komuro eventually gave in and agreed to appear in the film. Komuro left acting after Samurai Cop and wouldn't see the film in its entirety until 2014. B-movie favorite Melissa Moore, who plays Peggy, is best known for her roles in such classics as Scream Dream, The Invisible Maniac, Caged Fury, Hard to Die, Da Vinci's War, Sorority House Massacre 2, and Vampire Cop, which she filmed 1 year before filming Samurai Cop. She basically just serves to deliver the obligatory love scenes and to yearn for the affection of our main protagonist and his wandering eye, and delivers a performance pretty much on par with the rest of the cast, so you can hardly blame her. Cinematographer Peter Palian, who shot all of Shervan's American action movies, was working under considerable financial and technical constraints, so the film's lack of artistry is understandable. However, the weird dead center framing is not. Palian also went on to shoot another hilarious B-movie directed by an eccentric Iranian immigrant, John S. Rad's 2005 catastrophe, Dangerous Men. The film was scored by Alan Dermartirosian, and it's basically just generic synth and rarely elevates itself beyond muffled background music. Also, is it just me, or is the timing a little bit off on some of these musical cues?
Find that motherfucking Japanese gangster. I want you to kill him, and I want you to kill every one of his men. I want you to turn his house into a bloodbath. Don't leave anybody alive.
Dermartirosian does, however, make a cameo in the film as Fujiyama's lawyer, Tony. Shervan reportedly sold the distribution rights for $60,000 and, according to star Matt Hannon, ultimately raked in over $300,000 from foreign markets. While Shervan did take the time to shoot some interesting publicity shots for Samurai Cop, the film never saw an official theatrical or home video release in the United States, although there was a VHS release in Poland for some reason, although some cast and crew received time-coded VHS copies from Shervan following production. Obviously, Samurai Cop has gone on to gain cult status in recent years, with the rise of social media allowing fans to introduce the film to an unsuspecting public. The film has also seen 2 DVD releases and a fully restored Blu-ray release in 2014 from Cinema Epoch, featuring commentaries and interviews from actors Matt Hannon and Mark Frazer. Hannon's re-emergence led to a kind of career renaissance for the once deeply ashamed actor, seeing a popular interview with Red Letter Media in 2014, featured at the start of this video, several public appearances at fan events, and of course, the sequel. Producer and director Gregory Hatanaka currently owns the rights to the film, and he also co-wrote and directed Samurai Cop 2, Deadly Vengeance, seeing the return of Hannon and Frazer in their infamous roles, as well as whoever else they could scrape out of obscurity. Original cinematographer Peter Palian also returned, and the film was released on DVD and Blu-ray in 2015, with a 3rd film reportedly on the way. Also, Tommy Wiseau plays the villain. For your information. Italian filmmaker Orlando Carati would survive the film as its co-producer and go on to see a fairly successful career in producing and directing until his death in November 2018. Amir Shervan died in 2006 at the age of 77. The film was the director's vision of an all-American action movie with buff dudes and hot babes, explosions, car chases, and poorly choreographed fight sequences aplenty. And while he does manage to capture many of the 80s and 90s buddy cop action movie tropes, he fails to integrate them into, a coherent movie. Shervan never directed again, and couldn't have predicted the ultimate success and popularity of what is now his most beloved and profitable production, even if that love is for all the wrong reasons. If there is one genuine compliment one can pay to Samurai Cop, it's that it knows what kind of movie it is and what it wants to say, even if what it has to say is garbage. And that's something even the biggest studio films out there often struggle to get right. However, perhaps above all else, Samurai Cop is a lesson in failure, said the title. And what is that lesson, you ask? Well, it's that sometimes failure is just success in disguise, which I thought was pretty obvious. So if you've seen Samurai Cop, go and comment below and tell me your thoughts about the film. What are your favorite moments? How did you first discover the film? And if this is your first time hearing about the film, you are welcome. And is there another so bad it's good movie out there that you would just love to learn more about? And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, feel free to click like below. Don't forget to share and ring the little bell. And of course, if you want to see more videos just like this one, go ahead and click subscribe.
Now I'm telling these motherfuckers